We go to the scoring explosion, our offensive breakdown, and we're going to go position by position group here. And we showed this a little bit earlier, the depth chart. And this is just the Redcast depth chart. And I had a chance to share it with you earlier today, Erin, so you could look over it. And we probably got some things right. And I'm sure there's people pulling their hair out saying, why do you have this guy here and there and all that? The word I hate as much as anything on these is or. And if you look at the running back position, I have ors all over it. I just didn't know what to do with, Rahmir and Grant. And then somebody will say, hey, Ervin's coming up and doing great. And he is. And Yant has strengths that he can do too. And those wide receivers, they're going to be interchangeable in a lot of cases. So I don't even know it matters who's first string versus second. But I guess your first initial thoughts as I sent this to you and you had a chance to look it over, anything, step off the page to you?
No, I think you have the first team offensive line pretty much locked in. Although I would say the one person to kind of keep an eye on is Kevin Williams. From what we've been hearing, he's been doing really well, just kind of making a case for himself. So he's somebody where would I say he would unseat any of those players right now? Probably not. But knowing that, like, for instance, Turner Corcoran was out, could that be, what could that mean for Kevin Williams? So that's one that's pretty interesting. Quarterback, we obviously know that's what it is because Whipple told us as much. I mean, we've now heard it from several people, including Frost. It's Casey Thompson's job to lose. But Whipple pretty much said Purdy is taking snaps with the ones alongside Casey. So we know they're 1 and 2, and that Logan Smothers is essentially QB3 at this point. But you're pretty much right with the Orr situation with the running backs. Obviously, we've heard that Anthony Grant is pretty much starting to just climb that depth chart. So he may be one who gets himself without an Orr, which would be a great news for run the ball people, because what is the one thing so many Husker fans have asked for? Not to have the constant rotation of running backs every week. Yeah, you want to find that one person who you can really rely on and can build trust, and just, like I said, that's what you want to find. Grant definitely seems like he's up there, but we've also heard a lot of great things about, from Gabe Ervin, from Yant. Rahmir Johnson's in there too, but we also saw Rahmir Johnson working a bit with the wide receivers, which was interesting. So then you kind of are like, what does that ultimately mean? But yeah, I think when you're looking at your wide receivers, Trey Palmer, Omar Manning, Marcus Washington, I think those are easily, from everything we've seen, top. Aller Martin's name has gotten mentioned quite a bit up there. The one thing he needs to do is stay healthy. That is going to be incredibly important for him. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's pretty much like, I wouldn't swap any of these people out. The question I think just becomes in some of these groupings is, like, for instance, in the wide receiver spot, does anyone get themselves off a second team and move on to first team and move somebody down? I really could go, honestly, either way on some players right now.
So what do some of these guys look like from a size standpoint? Because, like, Gabe Ervin, I've heard one of his biggest issues, if we want to call it that, was that he was never like a big guy. He didn't look like the kind of guy that could, squat, what everyone else is squatting in the weight room, but that he's put a lot of focus on that this year. And that he is also really, really quick. So he's never really been kind of a between the tackle guys, but maybe with Whipple's offense, you might see him a little bit more on third down because he has pretty decent hands and is kind of making that transition with the team and showing some of that. Like, what do you see from guys like him in that respect?
I think Gabe Ervin, when he talked with the media the other day, I think people kind of noticed, like, I think we've seen a lot of players like Ervin, Yant, really kind of change themselves physically, if you will. What we know is that Gabe Ervin has added about 10 pounds to his frame. He does look like he has added some weight. That obviously, he's had to come back from injury. He's had to make some moves for himself. But, like, it's just little things like that discipline. Like, I think of Yant. Yant does look more like he does when he talked about, like, I feel better than I ever have. Like, he obviously the lesson here is cut out the fast food and all the Raising Cane's. Like, so like for me, I guess I'll get the best physical shape of my life if I just stop eating fast food. But I think you're seeing a lot of these players start to, I don't know, maybe it's always so hard when players come in when they're freshmen or even that second year, like as they're kind of finding their way. And I think you're starting to see some of these players kind of find what's important to them, put the work in as a result. And so, yes, Gabe Ervin, when we saw him in person, he looks like he has changed his physique, at least. What does that mean? How does it translate? But you think it would mean good things.
On the same kind of note, too, the offensive line, I've heard, too, that, and again, I don't get to see these people, and I'm asking you these questions because you got to see them, like, literally stand in front of them today. The offensive linemen, are they looking like offensive linemen, or are they, like, looking like, are they carrying their weight in the places that you want to see them, like upper body, lower body, not middle body type of stuff?
You were asking this last week, Rob, like, you mean like leaner, less gut?
Like leaner,
more...
yeah, like less gut, more muscle and strength. Are they starting to look like that, or how are they looking?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a very random story, but when I went to the Peach Bowl in 2017, when Frost and UCF went to play Auburn, and this was my, okay. So I've talked with so many former Central Florida players about that Auburn team, because I remember when they walked on the field, even UCF's players were like, oh my God, like what the heck? Auburn's like linemen on offense and defense were huge, like giant humans. They walked past me and I'm like, I've never seen a person this large. Like, this is a big human. I would say Nebraska has started to to what you're asking. Yes. I would say the offensive linemen are much more yes, they're slimming down in like the ways that you want them to. I think for me, I'm not yet at a place where I would say like the reaction I have to them is the reaction I had to Auburn when Auburn walked on that field at the 2017 Peach Bowl, where I'm like, oh my God. And to be fair, when we look at and I've actually done this and I need to do it again, I have compared the size of Nebraska's lines to other lines in the Big Ten, like Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Nebraska's not that far off, but Nebraska's still a little undersized. Like, when you take the height and you take the weight and you just kind of do the like general comparison of the starting lineup versus the others that they're playing, Nebraska against the Ohio State, Wisconsin, kind of these, the blue bloods of the Big Ten, is still just a tad under. And I'm talking like, here's the thing. It's not significant. We're talking like 5 pounds. Like, it's not anything wild, but it is enough to make a difference. So I think what you need to see that this offensive line and, even the defensive line too. And I do think you're seeing it because I see people's reaction to certain players. They see these edge guys, for instance, like Garrett Nelson, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's like changed his physique. O'Shawn Mathis, very similar. So now when you're taking that lens and taking it to the offensive line, now what they need to do is they need to just get stronger. Like, that is my just gut reaction, is like, they've got to be even stronger than they are. And that's not to say they're not very strong now. That's just an area where I think they are still working toward, is that strength.
It's not a lack of height for sure. When you have Prochazka at 6'10" and you've got Benard at 6'9", I mean, they're big, tall dudes. It's some of that girth, I guess you're kind of talking about.
They're almost bigger than the starting 5 of the basketball team.
I know. Well, it's not the kind of like weight that you want them to put on where it's like, you don't like, and that's what Duval and this strength and conditioning staff is trying their best to address with all of these players, is you want them to put on healthy weight. You want them to put on weight where it turns into muscle and it's strength. It's not just size for the sake of size. And I think that's kind of where, I think that's that's an area where the offensive line is still working toward that. That's not to say that they're not in a better spot than they were in the past. I'm just saying that's just an observation that I've had. I'm always very tuned into how people react. And so I've been watching how people react to say Nebraska's defensive line and how that group has changed their physique. And I haven't heard quite the same reaction from fans when it comes to the offensive line. So that is still an area of improvement. And I don't think anyone at Nebraska would like get mad at me for saying
No.
that. Like that is an area that they will continue to work on.
The first coaches clinic that I went to under Frost, so the 2018 one, they had Duvall was the first coach to talk. Normally it's some assistant coach, a coordinator or something. No, he wanted his strength coach to come out right away and kind of set the culture. We'll use that word, set the culture that strength and conditioning is important. And who's the first person that Duvall shows? He shows 4 photos of Khalil Mack at the University of Buffalo as a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Now, before Redcasters go off the Kool-Aid, charts with, I would say the development of Garrett Nelson from a physical standpoint, there are traces of what they've done physically with him and what they did with Khalil Mack at Buffalo. I'm not saying he's going to be Khalil Mack. I'm not making that comparison. I'm just saying just pure development. Nelson is a completely different physical being right now than he was 4 years ago when he came here. That's what we saw with Khalil Mack going through the transition, the phases from freshman all the way through senior. Offensive line is a whole different beast. I mean, when you're 6'9" and 6'10", you can gain 20 pounds and not even see it on a guy that big. It's those guys are just there's some big human beings, tall guys. But let's get into the actual position groups here. Let's start with quarterback. And as we talk about that, I'm going to have some of the practice running.
I appreciate the people who are just trolling that are like, like what you just said is I'm not saying this. And it's now you are saying this.
That's Boomer trolling us right
That's
now.
actually me. That's me
better.
trolling.
Oh, is that you?
That was me
better.
this time. Yes.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, as we're talking about quarterbacks here, and we're going to have some of the video playing in the background, obviously looking at our starting lineup, we have Thompson at the starting spot. You've got Purdy behind him. As you mentioned, Smothers was taking 3rd reps. And then even in here, you'll see Haarberg taking some. I guess, Erin, as you were watching practice, and you saw some of the quarterbacks out there, what were some of your takeaways and thoughts from today?
Look, everybody said it in like the 3.5 second clip that I put out on TikTok, but I will agree with everyone. Casey Thompson has a very quick release. Everyone, you said it. It's not wrong. I was like, how did you gather that from this video on TikTok? Come on. No, it's true. He's got a really quick release. That is what it is. I would say it's very clear that Casey is the leader of that group. He is the one who's moving pieces around. He's the one who's listening to Whipple. Not that they're not all listening to Whipple. I'm just saying that like one of the things I noticed is like Whipple is running them through a set of drills, and Casey was the one who was very in tune to like where do we need to be on the next one? Okay, not here, moving here. He was honestly even like directing the graduate assistants. He's like, okay, we're now here. So that made a lot of sense. I would say the one thing that this just in general, the quarterbacks need to be talking more is kind of something that is like a really like not like kind of maybe like small detail, but like we talk about the importance of just like communication and talking. You hear a lot of Casey. I would say when you're standing by them, you don't hear a lot of Chubba, Logan, Heinrich. They're a little more quiet. Mm-hmm. And that communication, the talking to each other, the bouncing, the like just getting comfortable with talking is so important in so many sports. You need to know what the people around you are doing. You need to be able to do that. It's not to say that those guys aren't capable. They are. Logan Smothers led Nebraska last season for a game. So they are, but it's also getting them out of that only doing it when they're in a game scenario. Like you will perform what you practice. So you need to be doing that in the moment. And so like when I was listening to the quarterbacks, I would say you can hear Casey. The others need to, keep working on that comfortability of just like talking to each other, saying things. Like, honestly, I was just having that conversation about volleyball. Somebody brought it up on Twitter where they're like, the best teams communicate. The best teams are talking in practice. They're constantly chattering. They're constantly like, obviously not when the coach is trying to tell you something. It's same thing as in football. Same thing as in basketball. Same thing. You got to be talking, got to be chatter. There has to be like the communication building. And so that's an area where I think the group as a whole just has to keep like working on. But Casey is definitely like when Frost made the comment that he has the experience, like it's very clear his experience across the board when you're watching him in moments like that.
How are they reacting to him too when he does that? Like, are they are they reacting well to him? Like, how's he meshing with the rest of the team? Because when he first got on campus, you heard about everybody, he's taking his offensive line out to dinner and he was doing all these great things for everybody, and everybody like, is that still kind of the feeling in there, or is he meshing well with the other players?
You're smiling.
It's so hard to know. It's so hard to know if you're not in the locker room. But this is the way that I would explain Casey Thompson, because I think a lot of people are going to want to compare, like, what is he like in comparison to Adrian, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And I actually don't love that. I'm going to actually use a comparison of somebody on the team right now. So let's go back to Garrett Nelson for a moment. Garrett Nelson is incredibly selfless when it comes to this team. He leads from a selfless position. He leads from a place of, what can I do to make this team better? It's not to say that that's not what Casey Thompson does. I think Casey is very much a leader of, like, whereas like Garrett is very aware of like everyone and how everyone plays into it. Casey, I think, is a little bit more inward focused. So there's a difference between outward focus and inward focus. And, like, to be clear to anyone listening, that doesn't make someone better or worse. You need all kinds of different players and leaders to make the world turn. Mm-hmm. But if, you are somebody, like, I think he, like I said, even just in the moments when I was like talking with him today, you can tell his mind is in a million other places. So I think he is somebody who's, like, we hear it all the time. He is a film junkie. He is always studying film. He's always studying the playbook. His goal for the season is to have watched and be aware of and have learned every play Nebraska ran in 2021 and know every play they plan to run in 2022. That is a giant undertaking. And that could be off-putting to somebody. Oh, one of my Funko Pops just fell over with that. But that could be really, like, that could be is off-putting. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying, like, when you watch kind of, I think people react to him knowing, like, he is here and he knows the playbook. He is studying it, and you kind of just, I don't know. Like,
it sounded like he had zip on the ball. I mean, the old thumb, did you notice any injury, remnants of that? Or did he look like he was fully healthy QB?
I didn't. And he did say he feels basically 100%, like, after the surgery that like changed everything. He's been improving greatly from that. And, like, that things are starting to feel a lot better. So obviously, what we witnessed when I talked about the quick release and watching his throws and thinking everything looked nice, that is in a very controlled environment. He is not, being pressured by a Big Ten defensive line in that moment if his offensive line is collapsing in front of him, which is very possible. So what does that look like a month from now? We'll definitely find out. But I mean, from a controlled environment perspective, everything seemed fine. And like I said, it seemed like people react, they listen to him. I will always say, though, this is the truth, no matter who it is. Like, he needs to win. He needs to lead this team to win. If they're not winning, this team will fracture, but not just because of Casey. It will fracture in lots of ways, in lots of areas. But, like, if he can win, if he can help lead Nebraska to wins, I could definitely see him being a catalyst toward sort of like a bond with this group that they haven't maybe even had in a while. I don't know. Like, it's so hard. We're not in the locker room.
And he went through some of the same stuff last year too with Texas. I mean, he put up big numbers in games and was losing games that he needs some of that confidence too. He needs the defense to win a game for him, just like the defense needs Casey Thompson to pull out something at the end of a game and get the victory. I mean, there is a bond that can come together from both sides. And obviously as Husker fans, that's all we can hope for.
Well, and back to my initial question too, Nelson sounds like the kind of guy that would pick you up at 3 a.m. if you needed a ride. And Casey sounds like the kind of guy that would probably just call you an Uber, but at the same time, but both are just as effective and will get you home just as safe. Right.
Yes.
Like, is that, yes.
That is the best. Okay. I have now, acquired 2 new, like, ways of explaining things for Nebraska football in the last week. And the first, I'll share the other one with you all because I'm really proud of it. But that is so right. It is the difference of Garrett Nelson will come pick you up himself. He'll drop everything. Casey will also drop everything, but he's going to pull out his phone and he's going to call you that Uber. Both are getting you home. They're just doing it in different ways.
There you go. And you can use that. You don't even have to credit me. It's fine.
No, I'll credit you. That's great.
I have my moments.
That's a great way of explaining that. No, I shared this example of like somebody was asking me to explain Nebraska football in recent like years. And I was like, Nebraska football is a ship that has sunk. And instead of somebody going, you know what, that really stinks, but let's just rebuild the ship. Let's take the framework that we really liked of the old ship and then also put in all the new fancy stuff that has come out in recent years that like we really like, but we'll keep the framework, we'll build the new ship, and we'll sail it off into the new decade of whatever. Instead, Nebraska is like, no, we really like that ship. And we're trying to pull it out from the depths of the sea. And if we can just get it out from the depths of the sea, we might be able to like drain the water from it and see if it still floats.
You just compared Scott Frost to James Cameron. Is what you just did. Yeah.
And so then there's Rose and Jack on a no, I'm just kidding.
I'm on top of the world.
No, but like honestly, when I was explaining this, I'm like, it kind of goes into what we were talking about with like you see little glimpses of the option, but you're seeing some new wrinkles in this whole thing. That is, I think, what you really need for Nebraska to be successful. Is it's not that you cannot build in the framework that made you successful in the past. That is absolutely like Nebraska is option football and like there's no reason to like completely depart from it. But you have to also adapt to college football in the way that it exists now and the way that the Big Ten exists. Like Nebraska's in an entirely different conference than it was, 15 years ago. And so for me, it's like kind of what we were talking about. It's just changing the way that this offense works a little bit. You don't have to like abandon what you did completely, but you do have to shift just a teeny bit.
We need to replace the engine.
Yeah, it's replacing the engine. Although the boat still might be sunk. If you pull it out, the engine is gone.
What I'm hearing is the fullback still has a role. That's what I'm hearing out of all of that.
We have a fullback. I call him Yant back, but that's different. Yeah.
Rob's favorite quarterback, actually, Torres. You've been huge on Torres, the true freshman. What did you see anything out of him today? Any throws? I know Whipple's been high on his arm strength and everything.
I'm just high on futures. That's all.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm interested to hear.
I will share this with you. We didn't see much of him. But I will also share when I caught up with Tommy Armstrong recently, he's been working with him in camps, and Tommy is super impressed with him. Really, really impressed. Thinks his arm strength is fantastic. Richard Torres wants to play. Like he is like, put me in, coach. I am ready. Now they're going to be really, really careful with him because there's really no reason to burn that red shirt unless you absolutely have to. And Nebraska has enough depth where I just don't see a scenario where you see him outside of like maybe some garbage time and they're absolutely like not going to play him a ton beyond what is just necessary to get him some experience. But he has been sold as pretty dang good across the board.
I'll go out on a limb and say that if he ends up staying and he gets to play, whether it be next year and 2 years, he might end up being the best recruit of the Frost era. And that's just, I'm putting that out there. And I will say that I've watched a lot of videos on him on YouTube and everything else. And I did this with Omar Manning. So, I can say I'm not afraid to put myself on the line, but I think Torres might be that next great Nebraska quarterback, but not in this traditional style that we know quarterbacks in Nebraska to be. So,
yeah, I mean, I actually, what's funny is I still need to get to it. But somebody sent me a video of him working out and practicing at one of the camps, one of Tommy Armstrong's camps, and people are very high on his arm strength. So it'll be fun to watch him evolve.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be like, he's going to be like so fired up to like want to play that. I do hope he gets some garbage time.
I have to ask, is your window open? Because I can hear your trucks going by too, or is that somebody else?
Not me.
Okay, I've heard that on a couple of your other podcasts when you're like you got the window open, you can hear like the garbage truck go by or something like that. So
Yeah, no, thankfully it's like 100 degrees outside. It's not that bad. It's 85.
it's pretty hot here right now too.
So where do you see Logan Smothers? What have you seen out of him? How is he fitting in going forward?
That's a good question.
So he, like, today, like, I've heard a lot of really good things about Logan. We obviously know, like, he is incredibly, like, we know it means a lot for him to be at Nebraska. He talked about that in the spring, how he wasn't interested in transferring, at least at that point. Whether that changes in the future is obviously to be determined, but, he's definitely in a really tough position because he had 2 new quarterbacks come in that are really good quarterbacks. And he's gonna, he said in the spring, he's like, I'm fighting for that number 1 spot. I think it was going to be a bit of an uphill battle. That's not to say that, like, he couldn't still, I think he could definitely at this point still make a case for the number 2 spot, depending on how things evolve with him. But, like, he's not a bad quarterback either. Here's the thing about where Nebraska is right now with its quarterbacks. They have multiple good quarterbacks. Heinrich Haarberg is also a good quarterback. Like, this is the thing that's wild about them. Like, I don't imagine that they're all going to stay at Nebraska through their entire careers. That would be unrealistic to assume so. But I'm like, you have a room of 5 scholarship quarterbacks that are all pretty dang good. Like, if you had to get to a case where Logan is going into a game, even at QB3, he's been in a game. He has led Nebraska. He has experience, maybe not a lot, but at least a little. Like, Nebraska hasn't been in that scenario in a while.
When Frost first came here, he said he wanted 5 scholarship or 5 quarterbacks. And I was like, that's crazy. How are you going to keep 5 happy? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And he actually has that right now.
Look, I don't know about anyone else, but there's nothing like going into a game where your starting quarterback's like hamstring is being held together by a contraption, and then by the end of the game, you now have Riker Fife in the game leading everything, and you're now starting to look across like other position groups and like, is anyone else capable? This is a good place to be for Nebraska. I don't know how long term, especially with NIL and the transfer rules, if they ever change again, if it's going to be an attainable goal to have this many quarterbacks that could play. But Nebraska is literally in a position where if something happens to QB1, QB2 can go in. If something happens to QB2, you got QB3. Oh, QB3 goes down? Well, great. QB4 can all, like, it is kind of honestly a little bit baffling how that room could honestly like swap in if needed.
So you're saying Torres will be starting by the end of the year? Interesting.
Why not? Just throw him in there. Let's just Iowa. There we go.
There you go. Well, let's move on to the running back position and some video again here today. And obviously that's the one where we have all the oars with Rahmir Johnson, who also is playing some wide receiver. And I think you see it a little bit at the end of this clip. You see him walking with some of the receivers. But Rahmir Johnson, Anthony Grant, the junior college transfer there from Mexico, and then Yant and Gabe Ervin, those 4. Let me go back up to the depth chart there. So yeah, Rahmir and Anthony, we had his first team. Second team, we had Yant and Ervin. And again, there's going to be situational plays there. I mean, Yant could be a big back in some cases, and so I mean, we can and Rahmir can go out into a slot and be a receiver. So there's situational ways that we can get guys on there. One of the questions I have, and this goes with Applewhite, maybe with some of the things he's done at TCU, is are there ways that we can start to get 2 backs onto the field at the same time? There's one ball, but there's ways to get more than 1 back onto the field at one time.
You mean like putting Rahmir Johnson as a wide receiver?
Could be, or how about
putting Yant as a fullback?
How about goal line? Yeah, Yant as a fullback or 2 backs and get some size in there.
Yant the damn ball.
Yant the damn ball. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Here's the thing. If you sincerely are looking at a group of running backs where we keep doing this, where it's like an or situation, it's like this or this guy or this guy or this guy or also this guy, like you got to start finding wrinkles to get them all included in some way. So could you get kind of creative in how you are putting them on the field and getting them out there and kind of playing with the way you run this offense, like, I don't see why not. If you have the strength, which your poll that you asked people, like, what they're the most excited about, gosh dang it, you had to put the, like, Torres quote up there. Oh.
Well, I mean, so Erin, and this goes with what we're talking about here. I said this, I think, last week or the week before, that Whipple's offense had 26 rushing touchdowns last year at Pittsburgh, right? And all of those rushing touchdowns were in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, one, they're in the red zone. That's great.
Did we
Two,
fact check
that means that guys
Gabe.
like Yant could be getting the ball within like the 10 to 5, because I mean, if there's anything, Yant might have to change his name to have like a C in there, so it's YACNT, because he's going to need that yards after contact. You know, it's like that's
wow. Sorry.
Moving on.
No, but you are right. I think some of these, I think like Yant especially, I think Yant definitely has the potential to be that person that, you know, if you're needing to make a serious like goal line stand, like if you're needing to go up against a goal line stand, you need somebody who can take a you know, a group of defenders coming at you and then keep going. He feels like he could be that person.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason that so many people are excited about the running backs, and I think there's a reason to be excited about the running backs. That here's the thing, Nebraska has struggled in the red zone, right? Like that has been a struggle under Frost, is in the red zone. So if it's something where if Whipple can make that work at Nebraska, where you get your offense in the red zone and then those running backs can make it happen, I think run the ball guy and gal would be pretty happy if there's some passes elsewhere, if those running backs are getting the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, Honky and I were talking about Yant this way 2 spring games ago. So not this year, but the year before. Afterwards, we were talking about just how impressive he was, being able to basically carry 2 or 3 guys with him an extra 5 yards. So it would be nice, especially with his new physique and from what sounds like what you're saying, the determination that seems to be kind of like, you know, just coming out of him. It would be awesome to see him in some of those situations where he's able to get those few extra yards that we need in maybe even 3rd or 4th down situations.
I am looking through the observations from Nebraska's practice today on Hail Varsity. Again, go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and get there. But one of the players that was out today was a true freshman running back, Ajay Allen. So we didn't get to see him practicing today. He would be kind of the 5th or 6th guy that we'd be talking about. Honestly, it's kind of a good thing to have enough guys that are upperclassmen and returners that freshmen aren't just stepping right into spots right away either. It's as talented as I think Allen can be, but there's definitely enough backs to go through ahead of him, and guys that, man, some of these guys have a lot to prove. Ervin, to come off that injury, I'm really excited to see what he does there, and Yant to show that he can be more of an every down back. He goes out and blows up against Northwestern last year, but then we don't see a lot out of him the rest of the year, and that's a frustrating point.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest point for me with these running backs, is what you really do not want to have happen is you do not want to have a running back who has a great game and then you don't see him again for 2 or 3 games, or you have this great game and then you're like, well, why are they not taking the first snap in the game following that? I think that is a level of frustration for fans. But when you also just talk about psychology of teams, if you're somebody and you're talking about, that's not to say if like something happened in practice that warrants that to happen. Like I get it. But like at the same time, it just happened so much in 2021 where it was like, what is happening from this game to this game, where like this player has this outstanding game and then suddenly is on a missing persons list by the following week. And that is something that I think is the biggest piece here with Whipple and Brian Applewhite is you got to find that person and you have to be consistent with it. And that's not to say you don't rotate people in as you need. But that honestly was one of the most frustrating parts.
Oh, well, you said it. You said it from game to game. It was even from half to half. We talked a lot last year about the Purdue game, and Yant in the first half had 4 carries for like 50 yards. And we were joking at half, sending out tweet polls saying, how many carries is Yant going to get in the second half? 10, 20, 30, or 40? Because it was such a no-brainer. And he got 2. It just made no sense. And, And, so that's what we're hoping. We want more consistency. Same thing can be said about the next position group that we'll talk about, wide receivers, consistency from players from week to week. Before we get to the wide receivers, Boomer, do we have any questions specific right now with the backfield?
No, I think we covered most of those already, and put the comments up as we were going. But I think a lot of it's been captured by our comments so far.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, we're going to move on then to the wide receiver and tight ends group. And this is some video of Thomas Fidone running up the steps. And I took one of your tweets. I was going to show it, but we got the video here of it to prove it. So he's running. That's good to see.
Look how big they are.
What's that, Rob?
Look how big those kids are. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. They're all like 7 feet tall.
So this is Mickey's group here. A lot of change since last season between transfers coming in here.
Just out there playing QB too.
QB.
No, I mean, he's also playing QB. That was Mickey Joseph. He was also playing QB. People talk about how Frost looks like he could suit up. Like, look at Mickey out there, just like tossing the ball around, just like no big deal.
Just like 1990 all over again. This is where, we obviously have 6 guys listed out of this group. And at one point, Mickey had even said he wanted 9 or 10. So, but really in a reasonable take, 6, roughly 6 here for receivers. Also, we're talking about tight ends in this group too. So Chancellor Brewington, who Rob talked with a couple months ago, we moved him up to 2nd. We had Chris Hickman at it, but it looks like he's in a boot right now. So we kind of moved him out just for the time being, at least. But Chancellor Brewington, Vokolek, and then Trey Palmer. Look at that transfer from LSU. Marcus Washington, transfer from Texas. Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, transfer from New Mexico State. Oliver Martin was a transfer a year or two back from Iowa. So really, Alante Brown is the only true recruit out of high school. And then you have Omar Manning on our list, a JUCO recruit from a few years ago. So that kind of group, there's height, there's size, there's speed, there's talent.
Your list changed, by the way, since you sent it to me earlier. So now I can expose you.
Okay, I changed Hickman to Brewington. Did I change anything else?
Oh, man. If I didn't like you before, Aaron, I like you more now.
I said it.
Y'all, he was all high on Chris Hickman. Then he saw him in a walking boot today, and he said, "Get on out. Chancellor Brewington is in."
What's up with Trey Palmer, too? Like, I want to know because
he apparently just wasn't feeling well. So Trey Palmer, like, no one needs to like overly be concerned. It sounds like he legitimately just woke up and was not feeling well this morning. At least even Mickey's demeanor to that question tells me like no big deal. Just especially like I think we have to remember COVID is still a thing. I hope he doesn't have COVID. Like really knock on wood, hope he doesn't. But like colds still exist. Like you could easily just wake up and like you could be dehydrated. You could just not feel well. Like there's a number. I get migraines. Like maybe he gets migraines. I don't know. But the way that Mickey Joseph responded to that question about him did not give me any reason to be like, is there something else? Is something bigger happening here?
Boomer's giving me a migraine with these damn banners going across the bottom.
Yeah, and that's not me. You'll know it's me because I do all caps.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, to the point on Mickey Joseph, he does want 6 whiteouts. He brought that up today. He's like, I'm still looking for my course, like my group of 6 core group. So like we know he's gonna, that is a goal. That is what they're aiming for. I think you're pretty much like, I think that these 6 are the 6. Where they end up on who could somebody make a case? Sure. I think, again, going back to it, the biggest thing here is Oliver Martin has to stay healthy. He has to stay healthy in 2022. But yeah, I feel like you got to feel pretty good with the wide receivers. You just have to, get them the ball. So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see this group.
So you're saying there's going to be a lot of 5 wide.
Why not?
Do you see actually, so if these are the 6 in some kind of order, do you have any ideas who you would think the 7th or the 8th might be that could be pushing them? We obviously have some true freshmen that have come in, Janiran, Bonner, and Decoldest, Crawford, who also wasn't there today. Did you see anything from any of those younger guys there that might be pushing for that? Or is this a pretty solid top 6 and you think it's going to be hard for someone to crack that?
I think it's pretty solid. Although I would have said originally to keep an eye on Decoldest Crawford. And then here's the thing. That one's going to be interesting because Mickey Joseph was like, talk to Whipple essentially Whipple pretty much then put it toward Frost and was like, talk to Frost. So we'll talk to Frost on Saturday. So we'll see what he said. But the difference is whereas Trey Palmer got he's fine. He just wasn't feeling well. Decoldest got pushed off. Don't ask me, ask somebody else kind of essentially. That's what gave me some hesitation there where I'm like, it's he didn't even say ask a trainer about it. He basically said ask Whipple about it. And then Whipple deflected that question as well. So my insight on it at this point is like, again, I'm very, very big on like, I don't like to speculate on injuries. Those are things that are like, I have been in scenarios where news has been broken about an injury before family has been made aware. We don't even know if Decoldest is injured, but I just don't like to speculate on those things. So all I will say is if you're somebody who's going, why was Decoldest not there today? The biggest difference, and like I always point out, like just pay attention to these little differences. The differences is Mickey Joseph told us Trey Palmer was not feeling well, which is why he was not at practice today. He did not want to answer anything about Decoldest, which is what stands out to me and is the primary difference. So now, we will ask Frost about it on Saturday and whether Frost provides a specific answer or deflects it as well will be very interesting. If Frost deflects it for some reason, it would make me think it's not an injury. So we'll find out.
Well,
I'm also now looking at.
Well, that totally answers that, and I feel 100% about it now. Thank you.
Here's the thing: you hope for the best for the individual because it's like you don't want anything to be. You want all of these players they're human beings at the end of the day. You want the best for them as humans. But if you're looking at it from a game standpoint and player standpoint, Nebraska has a lot of wide receivers that are going to be available and step up. And honestly, another person I was going to point out, I have to, is Kamonte Grimes. I think he's somebody to keep an eye on. He is somebody, and I wanted to just point him out because he has a really potentially fiery personality. He definitely is very, he's got like a quirky humor to him as well. So I kind of imagine that turning into like, you could be more of a vocal leader and personality, just kind of watching that. There was this, basically, I one of the Friday Night Lights camps, he was like off to the side, like dancing and hyping players up constantly. And so I kind of took note of that, where like he was so into hyping other people up. And I thought that was an interesting thing for him. So he's somebody I'd also keep an eye on.
And that on a side question too is, and because I haven't heard a definitive on this, how many people are they going to be able to travel with as far as players for like
Ireland?
To Ireland?
Because
I know it's an away game, like, so it'll be the same as an away game.
Well, it should be the same as a Big Ten travel. So the travel roster limit for football is 74. That should remain the same for this. So they are even though they're traveling overseas, it's still a Big Ten team. Now, if this was like, if they were playing Oklahoma or North Dakota or somebody else in Ireland, I assume that the rules would be different because there's the travel rules are different for non-conference games. You can take more players.
Yeah.
What about for Northwestern? This is a home game. Do they get to bring? Could they bring 150 guys like they would, or however many they have on their team?
Well, they might have 63 guys on their team.
Yeah,
so,
can they bring their full allotment of 63?
I imagine that there's probably, and this is a really good compliance question, because I imagine that there's probably, when you make the decision to go play at a neutral field, and technically this, even though it's overseas, is a neutral field, but like if you were Alabama and LSU and you decided to go play in Dallas, for instance, like I assume that both teams would would basically be agreeing to essentially both be travel teams to make that work. Like I can't imagine that they'd be like, bring on everyone, because then that becomes a whole issue of like, discrepancies between the team travel budgets. Can they both afford that? All the other, like, there's just like little nuances of that. And so My assumption would be, without having talked to compliance, but it's a really good question for a compliance department, is Northwestern.
And I ask is because that could be the reason why Mickey's like, I'm still looking for my 6, because maybe he's been told like, look, we're only traveling with this many receivers, right? So maybe that's
for
where
us,
this number.
we're nothing. I mean, we're the away team no matter what. I mean, that's this game. The closest comparison for Nebraska football in our history, you go back to like 1998, and we played Oklahoma State in Arrowhead, and that was Oklahoma State's choice. That was their home game that they gave up to play and make more money than having it in Stillwater, but they chose to play us closer to our home, but it was still a home game for them. I just don't know if they were able to.
Stillwater's still trying to economically recover from
that. They're trying to, right? As for Erin, the other thing is that we're talking about here, tight end wise, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, Vokolek has that position down, but then we have Chancellor Brewington, we have Nate, and I always get the last name wrong, Borkircher, I think from I'm horrible with last names, so I called him Hash Nutmocker for about 3 years before I got that one right. And we met his family, and
we met his family and hung out with
people.
Laura,
and I could never get his name right for like 3 years. So
there's a lot of, I'm trying to think of who did we just talk to the other day? Oh, Colton Feast. The amount of people who think Feast is incorrect. I'm like, no, Feast is correct. He think of him as, you hope he is feasting on the opposing team. Like, that is what you want. You want Cole. You want him to feast.
Yeah, we had David Feist on the show on Monday night. So, and it's spelled the exact same way.
Fight can write.
Oh, Fight. I'm sorry. Yeah. See, there we go. I don't even know.
Boomer, you just had a note there from someone you put up, and this was with Fidone. So Fidone was running steps. Do you think, I guess I don't even know what I'm asking here. Do you see him playing, early part of the season? Is he still kind of a mid-year kind of guy, or do you have any read on that right now?
Fidone, all we know is that Sean Beckton said they'd like to get him back this season, but they also don't want to push him. They want to play the long game with him. They want him to be healthy long-term in his career. I think you'll see him this season. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, so today is beginning of August, because they're still saying he's about, like, when we talked to Beckton, they said he's about 2 months out, I think is where they were at when they were talking about it. So like maybe October 1st, maybe by that Indiana game. Is that Indiana?
By about homecoming then. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Because I was going to say, no, that's not, because Rutgers is October 7th. So yeah, the first would be Indiana.
Yeah. No. And that, the Hickman thing was a little surprising today. I'll be interested to get Frost's feedback on that. There's a few areas that we need to talk to. Like, obviously, we need to talk to him about Turner Corcoran. We need to talk to him about Chris Hickman, because I definitely, like, when I saw Chris, I had to rack my brain for a moment where I was like, do I know that he's in a boot? Like, should I be aware of this? Like, have I? And I was like, I'm not drawing. I don't know. So I should say, for anyone who's kind of wondering about some of these injuries that we've seen, now here's a little thing to keep in mind for anyone who's, kind of observing all of this. These open practices, Nebraska shows us what they want us to see. They're very intentional with these practices. They would not have Chris Hickman out there in a boot if there wasn't something that would be easily answerable by Frost. So that's why not seeing Decoldest is an interesting thing, because he's not even out on the field. So when we talk about what Frost is going to give us as far as a rundown of these players, there's a reason that Turner was still out on that field, and there's a reason that Chris Hickman was still out on that field. There have been instances where, and I'm not saying that this was the case today. I don't know this to be true. I'm just talking about in previous years. There have been times where players, we don't see them, but then they show up in the videos that Nebraska shares later, because they come out after the media portion is done. So I'm not saying that happened today. It's just those are those things where these media portions are constructed in a way that we see very much what they want us to see. So I'm not creating conspiracy theories. Please don't do that. I'm just saying, when we ask Frost about these things on Saturday, I'm just pointing out he already knows. He knew before we even walked in there today to see that these are questions that he's going to get asked. And it was all intentional.
when we talked about option earlier, that wasn't out of the blue. That was very intentional that they wanted option to be seen and take that for whatever, whether that's for our fan base or that's for Pat Fitzgerald to have to study up one more thing, whatever it is. That's what it is.
He knows he will get asked about that on Saturday. That is 100% like. So yeah, I just think like these open practices are great because you do get a little bit, but like you also have to kind of take them with a grain of salt. Where I have to remind myself like I am being shown what they want me to see. So like I'm not going to get a whole lot of surprises out of this unless it's a surprise they want us to be surprised by.
Surprise.
Well, let's go to the last unit here, and this is the offensive line. Donovan Raiola there in the middle of the screen. Got a bit of a potty mouth, as Erin told us. That's okay. I don't mind my offensive line coach.
Gosh,
I don't
dang
care. YouTube cares. I don't care. And I'm not talking about YouTube commenters. I'm talking about YouTube's algorithm does not like certain words. Primarily
gosh dang it.
Gosh darn it. No, there are certain words that are totally fine. It's pretty much just the F word. So I'm very careful when I say, because YouTube is just, it's like, is this family friendly then? Okay, cool.
Yeah, for the most part, we don't cuss on the show. And yet when I upload it, I still have to answer that question about like, is it family friendly or not?
Do you tell him? Are you honest?
I always say no, it's not, because I guess I think of like my son goes on YouTube and like, I don't know. Not that I would mind him watching this, but I can't picture.
Are you selecting like this is for children? Like you're selecting like this is cool for kids?
Yeah, like that just seems weird. Like yeah, kids. That's not the demographic we're going after. But let's go back to the depth chart here. And
my daughter wants to watch the podcast, and she's 6 years old, and I still won't let her. So.
Well, so we actually had initially, and before I made a switch actually before I even sent it to you, Erin. We had Kevin Williams as a guard in front of Brock Bando. I've just seen Bando up there so much now, but we would love nothing more than to see Williams up there. Like I said, Rob talked with him in February. Redcasters, go back in our YouTube channel and watch that interview. Great interview. And I mean, he was right away talking about the physicality and everything that Raiola is going to be bringing. But I would love to see Williams play a big role, whether it's as 6-man and swinging around or if he can be a starter. But right now we have Teddy Prochazka at left tackle, Turner Corcoran at left guard, Hickson at center, Bando at right guard, and Benhart at right tackle. And that right tackle spot, we've mentioned this a number of times. Benhart seems to me almost to be the player to watch, because if he can man that right tackle spot, your big 6'9" guy that has 3 years of Big Ten experience and was a top 100 recruit, but he's also been a guy that's been in the doghouse and made mistakes, and there's been reasons why he's been benched. But if he, with some new eyes on him, can really take over that right tackle spot, that frees up Corcoran now to be whatever they need Corcoran to be. Right guard, left guard, center, whatever it is, because we're banking on Prochazka manning that left tackle spot. Mm-hmm. Can Benhart take over that right spot and really have two big, bookends?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of need it. Like this offensive line, here's the thing. The one thing that I do think is beneficial, but we've also heard this many years before. Greg Austin talked about it as well. So it's not surprising that Raiola is talking about it too, that like you want to be able to move these players around and have them be able to play in different spots. Like you need to be able to rotate. You need to be able to have essentially insurance in different places. But I mean, I feel pretty, like, I don't feel great. Oh my gosh, I keep knocking over my freaking Funko Pop.
Yeah, but what is the Funko Pop? Like,
it's Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
But she's a bobblehead too, so she's just a little top heavy. So
am I.
I know, it's fine. They just weren't really like thinking when they decided to make Funko Pops also into bobbleheads. Like the aerodynamic, like it just isn't, the science isn't working.
You just need to leave them in the box like I do back here. It's like you can barely see them, but yeah, they're there.
I mean, I didn't feel great about Turner Corcoran being out today. That didn't feel awesome, but I'm kind of like, we were also supposed to hear from Raiola today, and he wasn't able to end up talking. So like conspiracy theory, but we all will hear from him next week. So like prepare yourselves.
In Drake's the observations on Hail Varsity, he did mention that Corcoran, although he wasn't in pads, he he was going through the stretching period, so he was doing some things.
Yeah,
today.
he didn't seem like overly like I don't know. He didn't seem like he didn't show up in like a walking boot. So like maybe here's the thing: we're at the point in fall camp where guys are getting tired. You want to protect them. It could just be something as simple as like we just want to protect him from getting injured because we're just trying to like keep everyone healthy. But if you had Prochazka at left tackle, Corcoran at left guard, Hickson at center, Bando at right guard, Ben Hart at right tackle. Like, you got to feel pretty good about that. I think the biggest one is, like, can Hickson hold down that center spot? Knowing that was, it's a new player. He has big shoes to fill from what Cam Jurgens left behind. However, he is not filling that spot with a quarterback. Like, it's not like the quarterback is the same quarterback from last season who had played with a, it's not like if Adrian was still there and he had previously played with Cam Jurgens for multiple years and now he's switching to Hickson. You do have a new quarterback working with that. So like, hopefully the two of them are able to gel and get things figured out before the first game. But it's not a bad lineup. It's just really unknown. Like, I can understand why people are like kind of holding their breath about everything when it comes to this offense, because you can look at that and go, yeah, not bad. But at the same time, like, how confident are you in this offensive line that it's going to be able to protect the quarterback?
Well, a question I have, Jurgens did a great job of developing himself over his career here, but there were struggles as well early. I mean, the bad snaps that really kind of plagued him for a good season and a half. Did you see any of that today, or did things look pretty clean, even if it's with absolutely nobody on him, no defensive tackle up against him? Were we getting clean snaps? I mean, that's the difference in my mind between having at least a serviceable center. He doesn't have to be an All-American, but can we get somebody? Do we have somebody when we go to Ireland that's going to get the ball to the quarterback in the same spot consistently, play after play?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, like, what we saw was pretty limited as far as like we're not getting to see a lot of like. Here's the reality is like I'm not getting to see we're not getting to see Hickson with pressure coming at him, and so those are always hard. But like I would say the difference is like when we're talking about that first season with Cam Jurgens, now there are a lot of components that went into this. You have a converted tight end who's learning the center position, who's learning how to be an offensive lineman. It's a very different position to play. He's also wasn't to the size he needed to be at that spot at the time. And on top of it, Adrian Martinez had been working with Will Farniak all fall camp and finds out like almost like the week of the game, you're now going to be playing, like your starting center is going to be Cam Jurgens. That is a big adjustment for every person involved. And you saw the growing pains through it. The one benefit here is like Hickson is trained as an offensive lineman. This is not new to him in that regard. So like you hope there's just a little bit of a different layer of experience there that hopefully gets him over the hump that like I said, was growing pains when it came to Cam Jurgens stepping in initially when he came into that role, but he did do a good job of growing in that role. But I think, you really are not in a position if you're Scott Frost right now to have those growing pains. You need the person who's going to be in that position to be pretty dialed in. So can Hickson, can he be that guy? Can he step up and, not have a ton of errors?
That's going to be the key. And I've said that for a long time now with the O-line. It's about the errors. We got to get those cleaned up. Redcasters, I'm a broken record. We had 2 back-to-back pre-snap penalties against Oklahoma before we even had our first snap. We had 4 offensive line penalties in the first half. Northwestern in 2020, all 5 offensive linemen had a penalty on them. So they have that ready every time I start going into this. But it is the truth. The O-line,
all caps.
It's not just a physicality thing. The O-line has just been mistake prone the last few years, and that as much as anything needs to get fixed.